3 months ago, I started my journey reviewing all of these awesome sports cars, and I have quickly come to realize how great Corvettes are. The way they look, the way they sound, and most importantly, how well they perform make it past almost every single American sports car competitor. And today, we are in the C7 Z06, a car you can pick up for right around $70,000, which very well may be the best deal in the entirety of the car industry. So let's check it out, and you're gonna see why. First and foremost, this is a 2019, which means this is the last time a C7, Stingray, or Z06 will ever be made. Under this hood, you get a 6.2 liter supercharged V8 that makes 650 horsepower and 650 pound-feet of torque. That engine is known as the LT4, probably the greatest performing engine I have ever experienced. When you do one pull, you look in all your mirrors, you look everywhere, you're like, if you get caught, you are Along with those insane horsepower and torque numbers, Chevy claims that this car can do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds and run a quarter mile in 11 seconds flat. Now we're gonna do a 0 to 60 test in just 1 second, but beware, these are normal conditions and you can't just get 650 horsepower to grip on an unprepped surface. Nonetheless though, in the back, you get tire widths that are 315. They can vary from car to car, but this one has some meaty tires. So let's test it out. 0 to 60 test in the C7 Z06. Ready, set, go. I'll tell you right now, this car is not about the 0 to 60. That's more for the C8 Corvette. This car is about what happens when you're rolling in second gear and floor it. So let's do some justice to how good this car is. Ready? The C7 Z06 is one of those cars that once you drive one, it doesn't matter what any other car you get in after, it's gonna feel lame. For example, I reviewed a stage 1 tuned Audi RS5, which is a fast car, but this acceleration is so gnarly that it does not even compare to a 500 horsepower Audi. This thing feels way crazier. Now that is thanks to this car having rear-wheel drive as opposed to the Audi RS5's all-wheel drive, but it's also the sound that this car makes, which we'll talk about in a second, that make this just surpass every other car I have ever been in and probably will ever be in. It is so fast that if you do a single pull in any gear except for first gear and a cop sees you, you're getting your car impounded. That's if he can catch you. And if you don't want him to catch you, he ain't catching you. It's my first time ever doing this, but I am proudly and confidently rating this acceleration as an S. It is insane. And spoiler alert, there is another S to come. Can you guess which category it is? And we just got out of the C8 Corvette. That one was a Stingray, and I asked you guys which car you would rather have, the C7 Z06 or the C8 Stingray, and most of you guys said the C7 Z06. So to compare the two's acceleration, the C8 is much more tame. It's much more smooth, whereas this one is just a rowdy American mess. And when I say mess, that's what you want in an American sports car. You don't want an acceleration to be like, yay, you want to go, holy! Now, out of every other car we have reviewed thus far, this one is the most important one to have sufficient braking power. The acceleration is so much fun that you can't not do it every 3 seconds. So, to talk about the brakes, you get 6 piston brakes in the front and 4 piston brakes in the back, and I must say those brake calipers look really good on this yellow car. So along with those big brakes, remember this car weighs around 3,500 pounds, which is pretty lightweight for an average sports car nowadays. So let's do a 60 to 0 test and see how the brakes do. Ready, set, go! I'm not a big fan of how the brake pedal feels when you do that. It definitely stops, but it gives like too much feedback on the brake pedal. It feels like it's like braking, but it's fine. It is actually fine, I hope. And there's also something about the look of those calipers that just looks so good. There's some of the coolest design calipers I've ever seen. I'm gonna give the braking power an A. Now, unless we're talking Dodge Challenger Scat Pack, which we did review one of those, sports cars are not just about going in a straight line. They're about cornering as well. And the C7 Z06 with its lightweight territory at 3,500 pounds, which is a little bit heavier than the Stingray, by the way. Stingray's right around 3,300. The C7 Z06 comes with a 48-52 weight distribution favored in the back, which is actually better than the C8. I was not expecting to see those numbers. Let's really push this car in corners and see how well it can do. Yeah, it's really, really good in the corners. And I must say, it better be good in the corners, because if it's not, well, you could easily come into the corners with too much speed and ruin your, not your entire day, but your entire freaking life. I'm gonna give the cornering for this one a B. Some of you might be like, that's a dumb rating. Well, we also reviewed the Porsche Cayman and the BMW Z4, and those cars deserve to be above this one in cornering. Again, this one is definitely good, just not amazing. Not to mention, again, this car has 650 horsepower, so when you're trying to put the power down in the corners, it's just a little bit sketchy. The traction control does a great job making sure you're not an idiot, but still, you know, with the little press of your foot, you have access to 650 horsepower, so unless you're an ultra experienced driver, you're not super comfortable putting power down in the corners. What was that? I think the car's trying to say something. And while we're on that point, my one big complaint about the Corvettes is that the steering wheel feel in track and sport mode are just not as stiff as you'd like them to be. The C7 Stingray and the C8 Corvette and this car, I just wish it required a little bit more muscle and weight to put into the steering wheel when it's in sport or track mode. Sorry to interrupt, but watch what happens when I hit the gas when my body just goes limp. Ready? So far, this car is passing the tier list almost too well. So now, let's jump to the reliability section. When you do some research on C7 Corvettes in general, you'll find that everyone says great things about it. People say 5 out of 5 reliability, exceptional reliability, but there is one major issue. Both the Grand Sports and the Z06s are known to have their OEM wheels crack. To be precise, depending on the aftermarket wheels you choose after, because if you rebuy the same OEM wheels with the same problem, that might not be the best choice. It could run you between $3,000 to $8,000. But other than that OEM wheel problem, there is no like reported common issue that every C7 Z06 owner is known to experience. And the one we're in right now has 62,000 miles on it. Mind you, here and there, I do hear some weird noises, but it's really nothing concerning at all. I'm gonna give the reliability of this car, based on everything I read and how this feels, a solid B. Now let's take a second and soak in the exterior design of this car after we do one of these. So now that the C8 Corvette is out, this exterior design is just not as special as it used to be. Yes, it's still beautiful as a whole, but the C8 redesign just destroyed this car. But hey, before you get mad at me, just wait till you hear my rating. So to start with the front, I have always loved the look of the front ends of these cars. They're pretty simple, but very, very sporty. This design, I think, is better than a Mustang. It's way better than a Camaro. And thanks for cutting me off. If I ever even dent one of these cars, my channel will be gone. I will not be able to afford food. So since you have that massive, meaty V8 up front, you have a big grille to allow for a lot of cooling, which the Z06s definitely need. And you also have a massive hood vent, which I think is really nice on this car. Without that, I don't think the front end would look nearly as good. On the side of the Z06, you have another vent right near your front wheel and that beautiful Z06 badge. If it was a Stingray, you'd have a Stingray badge. And that's not the only vent on the the side of this car, you have two more. On the side near the rear wheel, you have an additional one right near the bottom of this car and another one right on the top. Even with all of that cooling, I have heard these cars can run into heat issues if it's a hot day and you're basically tracking the car, but it's enough for if you're just driving on the road. And in the back of this car, you get that beautiful, nice spoiler. Every time you look in your rearview mirror, you're reminded that you're in a Z06. Or you can remind yourself by just flooring it. And also in the back of the Z06, you have clear taillights, which that leads us on to the point of what is the differences between the C7 Stingray and the C7 Z06. Well, disappointingly, there are not that many. There's three very noticeable ones. Number one is that Z06 badge. Number two is that additional vent on the bottom near the rear tire. And the third are those clear taillights. On the C7 Stingray, those would be red and, well, not clear. But no Z06 badge in the back, which is kind of rare to see on a sports car like this. And my favorite thing about the C7 Corvettes are those quad tip center placed exhausts. Whether you get a Stingray or a Z06, they do not disappoint with how they sound. So right before we talk about the sound, let's give the exterior design a grade. So let's take a listen to how this thing sounds. Oh my gosh! It does not matter whether you hear this car from the interior or you're outside listening to this thing. They are so different and so good in their own way. Without the sound of this car, the acceleration just would not be the same. It literally, I kid you not, sounds like the devil himself is just screaming at you, like he is running right behind you, like, oh! This car is making me go psychotic. It's so good. Guys, why do I always run into cops when I'm filming? If you saw my GT350 video, there were like 80, and I have two cops talking to each other right in front of me. We're just gonna... There's one. Always the undercover trucks down here. I don't know why. So, without hesitation, I have only done this once. This will be my second time. Proudly and confidently, I am giving the sound of this car an S. Alright, I need to pull off to the side for a second because I'm gonna get in some serious trouble if I keep driving this thing. Let's quickly take a peek at the interior, and I will say, after getting out of the C8, yes, this is not nearly as nice, but if you're trying to pay extra money for the interior, not because of the performance, that's a weird reason to buy a sports car. The C7 Corvettes have everything you need, if not more, and I'm gonna show you why. So right when you open up the door on this car, you notice that, well, nothing special with the door panel, but you do get some nice yellow stitching to match the color of this car, and that's nice. These seats are really cool. They continue that yellow stitching. They have some carbon fiber on them, and you even get a little competition badge right between the headrest and your backrest. And also with those quad tip exhausts, those are active exhausts. So if you go from comfort mode over to sport or track, those valves open and make it sound phenomenal. So once you take a seat and you're looking at the steering wheel, well, these yellow paddle shifters again are a really nice touch to this car. That's super cool. You have the Corvette logo and a Z06 badge with some, I believe, fake carbon fiber. And unfortunately, there's quite a bit of fake carbon fiber. I believe the owner put this in aftermarket, but this is all over the infotainment system or the dash. I mean, it looks good, but once you touch it, you're like, oh. And the gauge cluster in the C7 is amazing. You get 220 on the dash in the C7 Z06. And the screen in the middle is configurable based on which drive mode you're in. So you have weather, eco, tour, sport, and track. And of course, as always, track is the coolest design. Also, right in your gauge cluster, you have a Z06 logo in there. Just to remind yourself, it ain't a Stingray, because there's not a lot of reminders going on around here, other than the supercharger. Now, right in the center console, you have that beautiful stick, which continues that nice looking yellow stitching, and right behind that is your drive mode selector. So that's where you change from weather, sport, eco, track. Always stay in track, obviously. But this center console is really not overwhelming. It's pretty plain. All you have in there is your stick, your drive mode selector, your parking brake, you have your cup holders, and you have a little cigarette lighter. And the C7 also comes with a nice infotainment system. When you use the C8s, you realize that, yep, this thing is a little bit outdated, but again, you just don't need more than this. That's why I say, if you're paying an extra $20,000 to get the C8 because of the interior, that's not really a reason to get the C8. At least in my opinion. I'm more of like a, how does this car do on the road? So in this infotainment system, the only things worth noting are that if you go into settings and then hit driving mode, you're able to individually configure both your engine sound and your steering wheel feel. And also in settings, you have valet mode, which does make this car car feel really special. And this car has an option which gives you the heated and ventilated seats. Oddly enough, the passenger has two options to choose their heated and ventilated seats. They can either do it right on their side or they can do it in the center console / dash area. I do really like when car manufacturers just spoil you for no reason. Like, I don't know why they have that, but I like to have it. And also in this interior, although you could also just consider this an exterior feature, this roof, you can take this thing off and that goes right behind us over here in the trunk area. So that is one of my, again, favorite things about the Corvettes is that you don't have that ugly looking soft top, but if you want it to be almost a convertible, you can do that. However, it's manually, but that's okay. The new Miata RF that we reviewed did that at just a push of a button, but if that makes this car go up $5,000 in value, I don't want it. I'll just do it manually. As for the interior design, I really like all the stitching, the little color additions to match the exterior design, heated and ventilated seats, the selectable drive modes. This thing is nice and it's really everything you need. But just because of the fake carbon fiber, a lot of plastic in the center console, it's not over the top. I'm gonna give the interior design a B. And to quickly address the comfort of this car, that's not what this car is for. You definitely feel every single bump you go over, but I will say it's not so bad that you can't stand it. It's just not the best. So I'm gonna give the comfort a C. And here's the real question. Can you afford this car? I can't, but maybe you can. This is around a $70,000 car. It gets 15 miles per gallon in the city and 22 on the highway. And again, because of the reliability being reportedly exceptional, you don't have to worry about anything major breaking and dealing with a super expensive, maintenance fix or cost. Yes, the insurance is probably gonna be a good bit on this car though. But an oil change is like $130 if you don't do it yourself, which is insane for a car like this, especially when you compare it to a Lamborghini Huracan, which by the way, this car is faster than a Lamborghini Huracan. And you also got to factor in that if your wheels crack, that's going to run you between $3,000 to $8,000. But just considering everything I read aside from that wheel issue, I'm going to give the cost of ownership a B. Also, be sure to check out the review I did on the C8 Corvette. That thing is one of the best redesigns I have ever seen in my life. And these cars are right on the same price point too. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.